Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Healing and Freedom Journey. Mark DeJesus here. I am your brother from another mother, bringing you insights to help you as we walk the healing and freedom journey together. I'm all about mental, emotional, and relationship health. And if you are too, you've come to the right place. So welcome, take a seat as we continue our journey on breaking down the work of toxic guilt. And today what I want to get into is 8 common toxic guilt battles that Christians struggle with. Many of you are going to find at least one, if not all 8, in this list. And I want you to gain some discernment, but also to look at what would life begin to be like if I let go of the constant guilt trips that I go on. I listen to them. I compulsively act on them. I react to them. I'm always checking and listening to what guilt says. And I need to understand there's a better way for my life and for my journey. Before I get into that, just a reminder, if you appreciate these videos, click like and subscribe. You can also go to markdejesus.com and sign up for our free email newsletter. You will get a download copy of Experiencing God's Love as Your Father. You can get a hold of that today. It's a blessing for your journey. You can also support these videos by going to our website, click on the donate button. You can give a one-time donation, or you can become a regular supporter. So let's get into today's subject and talk about these 8 areas. And I want to say, number 1 is definitely at the top of the list of toxic guilt battles that Christians struggle with a lot is the not enough syndrome. Not enough in your spiritual disciplines and activities. If I was to lay out the number 1 theme that I hear Christians talk about in their struggle is, I don't pray enough. I don't read my Bible enough. I don't spend enough time with God. I need to get my time with God. And so then they spend time with God, and it's like, yeah. Okay, I did that. I'm a good believer today. We get locked into this, I'm good with God because I was good today. And that feeds the guilt cycle, because when you're not doing so great, the guilt starts to increase its voice. So time with God, prayer, Bible reading, church involvement. I'm not doing enough in my church. I'm not doing enough in my community. I'm not serving enough. I'm not giving enough. I'm not doing enough. And so the guilt kicks in, and it will get us to try to compulsively do something to make ourselves feel better. So how many times do we try to go back to praying, try to go back to reading the Bible? We do something for somebody because we feel bad and we feel like we should be doing something, or we need to give money, and we do it out of that place of guilt. If I don't, something's going to happen. And this is a cycle that is keeping Christians bound over and over and over again. And I want to release you as brothers and sisters from this burden. Even though many people have taught you from a place of guilt, they have pushed guilt on you, and they've used guilt to motivate you and to manipulate you. I want you to understand that our spiritual life is not improved by following guilt. Trying to improve your spiritual rituals, your routines, and what you do by guilt does not bring about long-term change, long-term transformation, and long-term fruitfulness. You know what does? Love, being impacted by love. And if you struggle with love, that is showing where you are needing healing and renewal in your life to be able to receive God's love and not have a relationship based out of guilt. God is not this resentful person holding you to where you don't seem to measure up in your current Christian rituals. He's about today. He's about now. Now, passive-aggressive or active-aggressive, guilt-ridden, resentful friends, if you meet with them, they go, we haven't met in a while. It's been a long time, stranger. Where have you been? Huh? I tried to call you. You didn't call me back. Heavy. Those are the kind of friends you don't want to hang out with, right? I wonder if God is saying to many of us today, hey, this whole routine is boring and guilt-ridden. How about we reboot things? Because I believe God in heaven is wanting to have a thriving, active, and fruitful interaction with our lives. One of the signs that we can see that our relationship with God is so filled with guilt. Do you enjoy connecting with God? Do you enjoy reading his word, enjoy praying? Many times guilt robs of enjoyment, of just connecting, and everything becomes obligation. It becomes something I have to do versus something I get to do and I enjoy. Because once something becomes I get to do it, it becomes something that's connected to joy. Joy is the fruit of the Spirit, and a relationship that is infused with love, peace, and joy is going to be something you're going to return to. So many of us need to be released of this guilt-ridden thing. And thank God that if I pray today, and let's say I haven't prayed for a few days or whatever, thank God he doesn't go, Mark, nice of you to show up today. That he's about now. People who are not super guilt throwers and shame throwers, they're about the here and now. It's good to see you. Sit at the table. Wow, he's so gracious, and I appreciate that in him, because then it helps me to pay attention to here and now and the newness that love is bringing about versus getting stuck in where I can't seem to measure up. Second area that's a big one for believers is guilt over past sin issues. And I talk a lot about this in shame cycles. I talk a lot about this just in general, about the old us, the old patterns, the stuff of the past. It constantly makes Christians feel disqualified. The struggles of your history, the memories of it. And maybe some of them seem like they're higher on the list. Maybe you've gone through a divorce, and now the fact that you're divorced follows you. Maybe you had a lifestyle of addiction. You had anger battles, and people were harmed. Relationships were harmed by your lack of love or inability to love. The list could go on and on. Certainly, our enemy is always stacking up accusations of our past, and so what it does is it makes Christians uncomfortable with their history. And we don't want to talk about it. We have struggles. And that is often because shame and toxic guilt and just condemnation are owning the narrative and interpretation of our history. So then we can't heal and navigate through things because guilt is wanting to block us from the grace of God. When we struggle with toxic guilt, it leaves us in a place where we're always trying to fuss and fix over our history. And of course, it's helpful to have good conversations with people in the past when it's redemptive. Now, many in my community become obsessive about going to people in the past, trying to fix things, trying to do, maybe if I do this, maybe if I do that. And what they don't realize is their life is infused with condemnation, shame, and guilt. So they're listening to that and they keep trying to do things to make the past better. And so God is a redemptive God. He takes everything. In fact, Romans talks about he works all things together for good. That doesn't mean he takes all the good things that you've done and works them together for good. He takes all things in your life, everything you've been through, your mistakes, your struggles. God, in his love and grace, is wanting you to know today that he uses your whole story for great purposes. So if you've been through a divorce, he's going to use that part of your journey to not only show you grace, to show you redemption, to show you healing, but to let you be a light to others who struggle, who have had terrible experiences in their life or deep struggles, or maybe they've gone through hard marriages or divorce in their own life. But I know toxic guilt is going to really try to bring the shame factor in. And that shame will bring a painful feeling of humiliation or distress by the consciousness of wrong or even foolish behavior. So this leads you to having a hostile relationship with self. It will lead you to struggle with receiving forgiveness from God, and you looking at yourself and forgiving yourself. Because many of the past sins and things need to be processed through the lens of grace, but also in a way where you see yourself the way God. I need to see my history the way that God sees it. But one of the key issues here in this battleground is we struggle with this unlovability. I'm not lovable and I'm disqualified. So we latch on to unworthiness because, and we hear the thoughts of disqualification and it sends us down spirals, or it sends us down religious rituals that we try to do to fix things, and we do them over and over and over again. Like, for example, on this slide I've written, we ask for forgiveness over and over again. And if you keep asking for forgiveness and you still feel bound, you're under the influence of toxic guilt, shame, accusation, condemnation. A third one takes it even a step further. Chronic toxic guilt over your current sin struggles. The struggles that you have now, certainly the enemy will want to use shame, accusation, condemnation, toxic guilt to keep you stuck. Will highlight it, magnify it, have you panic over it, and then you try to do all this good behavior. You try to do all this stuff to make it better. So then you get into performance mode. And instead, what we need to connect to is the grace of God, that even in our sin, he is wanting us to embrace the love that he has for us. We are not lovable because we get things right. And in a lot of Christian teaching, we can condition people that love and embrace happens when you do better. And is God holy? Yes. Sin is sin? Yes. But there is no chance we can process an understanding of the holiness of God or sin apart from God's love and grace. We will drown. And that's a lot of what we live in today as Christianity. We are disconnected from love and grace, trying to talk about all these different subjects and trying to navigate our battles. And we're trying to find self-help techniques, or the 3 things you need to do today. And it keeps us from getting to the heart. Because when you have current sin struggles, God wants to help lead you to the heart of what's going on. Why you even have those battles to begin with. Because a lot of those areas need heart healing. They need new mindsets. They need revelation. They need areas where you can come to your senses and begin to make true heart changes. And even but we can't do that without having a perspective like God has over our battles. So these are areas where you're still trying to overcome. You're still struggling. And so toxic guilt will keep you from sobriety, because sobriety is going to let you see the battle the way you need to see it. All right, this is why I struggle with addictions. Okay, this is fueling OCD. These are the things that go on that keep me in these same patterns over and over again. I'm learning as I'm going. That's what grace does. It connects us relationally. And in relationship, we start to see, okay, here's what's going on here, God. Thank you. And that leads us into freedom. The fourth one is guilt over unpleasant past experiences in your life. I've had my share of this over and over again, where certain experiences replay and replay and replay. They're imperfect moments. They are embarrassing moments. They usually involve relationship interactions where somehow we were seen in a certain way that creates embarrassment. We have flashbacks of those moments. It often dumps into shame. It can move into the area of deep regret, where we feel sorry, distressed, conflicted, disappointed in certain areas of our life. And then the replay goes into woulda, coulda, shoulda, and it doesn't let you move forward. It doesn't let us see our past through loving compassion. I see this a lot in the area of guilt. You look back at a past experience that didn't go so great. It was just an interaction. You said some goofy things, or you said some things that maybe weren't the best, or maybe you're just looking at that moment and not giving yourself grace. What guilt does is cause you to turn on yourself, where it's guilting yourself, being hard on yourself, and you walk away with intense blame. So you're hyper-evaluating yourself and how you did in a way that is unloving. I am in the work of helping to set free brothers and sisters from a unloving, hostile, anti-love, self-beating up self relationship. I want to set you free from the bondage of how you relate to you, because guilt is going to keep you in a hostile relationship with yourself. And what guilt will do is prevent you from actually healing through trauma. You're so busy blaming yourself, you can't even see the wound to work through it. This is going to be very important when it comes to healing of difficult past experiences of any kind. Number 5 is guilt over your life performance, meaning like how you're doing. Maybe it's how you're doing at work, and beating yourself up, feeling bad. And it doesn't let you see it for what it is, so that then you can learn and move forward. This happens a lot in parenting. Those of you that tune into my materials and you are parents, you're going to have to apply a kinder perspective to yourself because you hyper evaluate your parenting and you go into, I'm a bad parent. I'm a bad dad. This is a big one that I hear. I'm a bad mother. Moms, you're going to need to embrace a grace-filled, loving-filled perspective over your mothering, current and past, because you'll need to see it sober. And even if you've made mistakes in your mothering, which all of us in our parenting make mistakes, if you see it through guilt and shame, you're not going to be able to talk about it freely. There won't be room for healing. If you see it soberly, and let's say you made some mistakes with your kids growing up and now they're grown adults. If you're able to see those things soberly with grace, then when the subject comes up, you can talk openly about it and show your healing and what you're working through and have fruitful conversations. Those of you that have young children, you're incredibly hard on yourselves and beating yourselves up, and it doesn't let you be present in the moment because you're constantly evaluating your performance, how I'm doing. Or in relationships or just in life, you're constantly just in it, checking on the imperfections. Checking the imperfections of something about you, about how you feel, about how you're doing. And you have an inner critic that's just watching you all day, and it's keeping you bound. And it's time to draw a line in the sand and say, I am not listening to this abusive voice anymore in my journey. Number 6 is guilt-ridden relationships. And this is where in my pastoral work, I really rolled up my sleeves and I encouraged our families and friends and community within the body of Christ to we've got to stop these guilt-ridden relationships. A lot of them are rooted in family, where you relate to your family. And it's hard to move forward in God because you're stuck to codependent family patterns. And many, many people stay in toxic relationships based out of guilt. They feel bad. And if they have to step forward and move on, they feel bad and fear comes in and they want freedom, but they don't want to make the tough decision because when you break free from guilt, you often have to make tough decisions. Tough meaning strong, meaning there's going to be resistance, meaning there's new thinking patterns that are going to be needed to be embraced. Many of you will need to realize you've got false responsibility that you carry on for others, and you feel guilty if you don't feel guilty. Many, like myself, you feel a lot of guilt and responsibility when there's conflict, and you take on that you feel you need to apologize or do something to fix things, and it's conditioned you in a way where you're always taking responsibility for those kind of things. I've got 2 more, and the next one may surprise you, but it's something that if guilt surrounds your life, you're going to have to realize there are times you push guilt on others, and you may not know how to identify and express your needs in a healthy way. So you may do it in more of a passive aggressive or guilting somebody, talking to them to make them feel bad to then cause them to act a certain way. Many preachers, teachers, Christians in general, we try to teach others through guilt. We talk in a way that shames and induces someone to feel bad, not sober, but we're just pushing that button because that's an easy button to push. I can make you feel guilty by making our conversation based on your failures, your mistakes, your shortcomings. That's very easy to do. It is not hard to see someone's shortcomings. It does not take a wise person to see shortcomings, sins, weaknesses, and mistakes. It takes wisdom to invite grace, love into the picture so that we see sin, struggles, and bondage in the perspective of God's redemptive divine ability to change hearts and lives. But we're so bound up with guilt that we either get lost in the mesh of it and entangled in it, that they're how we connect, or we're confused with love and what it even looks like, and we're using guilt to try to maneuver things in relationships. And I think it would be helpful for you and I to both realize, okay, this is not of God. And I don't want to have a relationship with anyone, God, myself, or others, that is sin focused as a primary way of relating. And guilt-ridden religious spirited people, it's sin focused. We're looking for the flaw. We're not looking to relate. When I'm looking for the flaw, I'm not loving you. And now we equate, well, love means we just don't see anything. No, this is how broken we are. That we think living in love and grace means we ignore sin. No, in fact, we know how to handle sin in a more effective ways because we're rooted in love and grace. Oh, this is so good. I'm encouraging myself. I'm edifying myself today. So if no one gets anything out of this, I'm getting something out of it. The last one, you may be surprised to hear, but this is actually number 8, is one that I find to be one of the most challenging things I see today amongst believers. And it is actually guilt that arises when good things are brought your way. If I want to see someone's bondage manifest the quickest, right? Let's say I wanted to trigger your bondage or your struggle. I want to trigger your emotions in a negative way. We would think of something mean, right? We're going to make them mad. We're going to trigger their anger. I'm going to tell you a quicker way. Do something extravagantly gracious and generous. I've seen more toxic manifestations by simply being generous, many times more than anything else, because it brings up our sense of unworthiness and unlovability. And many are worried, I'm going to be entitled. If I receive this, it means I'm entitled. It just shows how we haven't been rooted in the beauty of God's loving grace. It's his goodness, it's his kindness that actually leads to a turnaround. God's goodness is meant to change our mindset. And we've been so used to toxicity, we pray for good things, but then when God sends it, we don't know what to do with it. We reject it because we've come into agreement with unworthiness that guilt has trained us in. If I just gave you a big wad of cash today, it could manifest a lot of the struggles that you have in your life. I see it over and over again. I'll say a kind word to someone, and it will hit. Well, I don't know. He even believes this. If you only knew what was going on with me. It shows us how empty we are of love. And many will say, well, if I say yes to it, I'm going to act arrogant or I'm going to be prideful. Let me ask you a question. Isn't it really prideful to say to God's love and grace, no, I'm not good enough for that? Aren't we taking pride in our brokenness? We've become loyal to our weaknesses. We've become loyal to an absence of love, that when love arrives, we push it back. The issue is love and grace, folks. And I had to make a decision in my journey that I was going to say yes to God's love and yes to his grace over my life. And I was going to say yes to his love and yes to his grace when it showed up in people being kind to me in any way, whether it's someone praying for me, a kind word, a generous gift, or even someone I'm going on my morning walk and someone says hello to me and smiles. That within the whole spectrum of experiences, that I connect and say yes to receiving the goodness that shows up in my life. And when it does, here's how we start breaking through. Instead of feeding the fussing, we say, thank you, God. The journey into grace is enhanced greatly through thanksgiving. I'm going to practice gratitude at everything I see that is good, and I'm going to hug it from the little to the small. And when I feel myself fussing, because many of you, someone just gives you a hug and you're fussing. Someone compliments you, encourages you, you're fussing inside. Now, we can't always prevent the fussing. It is what it is. We can, though, make a decision. We're not going to feed the fussing any longer. I'll make a t-shirt today. Stop feeding the fussing. Fussing, 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 fussing. Meanwhile, the embrace of heaven is here. The grace of Jesus Christ, who gave his life for you, resurrected for you, and the Father's love is here for you today. Say yes to it. Say yes to it. And start looking for it, because toxic guilt has sought to block you from it. What's helpful for you today in this broadcast? I pray it's a blessing to your life. Be sure to go to markdejesus.com. Check out my library. You can join our wonderful community where I'm going to have some extra videos on this topic and processing and sharing a bit of my own journey in some ways, and be able to answer questions further there in our Healing and Freedom community. But Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. This is your brother from another mother saying I'll be back with more insights for your healing and freedom journey. But in the meantime, I'm out.